has a new book out on how to conquer PTSD. And I'm so sorry, Peter, but I got carried away. You know, Charles Hudler was saying, you should talk about your farm stuff. I'm like, I don't have time. There's so much to get out. But anyway, thanks for holding. My apologies. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It was worth waiting for.
So you've been through a lot. You're going through a lot right now. I won't go into everything you're going through, but I called you a while back and you were feeling a lot better, and you were telling me that you have discovered a new method. It's kind of like an old method, but it can help all us vets with PTSD.
Yes, I didn't set out to do this, but it happened by accident, like most things can do. But the technique that I ended up using, literally you design it in one day. And then you launch this particular technique anytime you feel PTSD coming on, that kind of thing. It actually helps for other things too, like depression and whatnot, but it works incredibly well. So we've got our first book out. It's up on Amazon, Cure PTSD Today, and our website is up, cureptsdtoday.com. But it's if we can help 10% of the people, just 10, I'll take it. You know, there's a lot of PTSD sufferers out there, and they're not always, for the military. They're first responders, police, ambulance, that kind of thing. All the way down to 6-year-olds apparently have PTSD. I had no clue. In doing
even that. So, mm-hmm. I'm involved in, Native rights, and there are a lot of Native veterans because they really serve, and they also talk about generational PTSD. That's actually been proven in epigenetics, like with the Holocaust survivors as well, so that that trauma can even be passed on.
Yeah, I actually think it's more in our DNA. The more research I did, the more I realized our fight or flight routine just kind of goes in the super overdrive in some cases, and that's what PTSD really is. But without fight or flight, we wouldn't be here. We got to know when to fight or run. If you didn't know either, you got eaten up by whatever. And so it seems to be across the board. I was shocked, quite frankly, to see that. And we've instituted this program. Like I say, it takes a day to do. I fixed myself. I was always the guinea pig, and I didn't, like I say, set out to fix it. But I had PTSD for 46 years, just recently diagnosed 2 years ago. And I cobbled this thing together, and I've been PTSD free now for about 8 months. It took about 4 months for me to really notice that something clever had happened. 2.5 months into it, it stopped altogether, where it was like clockwork for 46 years before. So we definitely have something of interest to anybody that suffers PTSD, whether they're first responders or the military.
Yeah, I noticed because, I did my chaplain check with you, and I was like, wow, you sound so much better. You've been through, because we've all been through a lot, I was talking about with Ken before the show how, just the whistleblowing takes a toll on your immune system as well. So I can attest to having known you forever, and then hearing and seeing the difference in your voice. So that's PTSDtoday.com is the book, and there's an introductory video too. Is that right?
Oh yes, we have a number of videos up on the web. Our website, of course, cureptsdtoday.com. They can go over there and see the whole story. And like I say, we have the books for sale, both print and Kindle, up in and soon to be, I hope, audiobooks up on Amazon. But like I say, we get a little beat up over you can cure it in a day, because everything else takes forever if they're even quasi-successful. So, but putting one program together a day probably takes about 4 hours, to be honest with you about that, and just fire this thing off, and it's amazing what it does. Just amazing.
So it's a Kindle book?
Yeah, we have Kindle as well as print. And, you and I were talking, a lot of living histories are done in a similar vein with the Apaches, apparently. You can tell us about that. But this technique is somewhat tried and true, although people didn't really know to put it all together the way we did. Maybe in the engineer, I cobbled it together in a certain way that that was one of the big keys, is how we did it.
Yeah, my book Chase is now a Kindle paperback, and my other book, Initiation: Boys Are Born, Men Are Trained. My Journey with Apache Medicine Man is I don't think that's available on Kindle, but I don't think it's Kindle original. But yeah, the deed expounding our traditions of Native folk for war ceremonies, and also when you come back, you go through a purification rite. Inipi in Lakota and Tachin in Inde in Apache is a sweat lodge. So it sounds kind of like it's ancient internet technologies rediscovered to me, as much as I understood what you were talking about.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, the initiation book, you know how much of a big fan I am of that. I've got to get one for my grandson, William, who's actually listening to the show today. I've got to get him one of those copies up to him too. So those are on paperback still?
Yeah, those are on paperback, and I'm doing. I have a student who's doing equine therapy with me, but really he's doing traditional Apache horsemanship in Day Zoo, and he's getting into that and saying he wants his son to get into that too. So it's all tied in. Sounds real good. Sounds really helpful. And by the way, there are not 22 of us committing suicide every day. That's a myth. You want to say anything about that?
Well, I've always heard 22 to 40, but no, maybe you should talk to that one, because those are the numbers that I've always heard from the VA.
Nah, we're better adjusted. We're better educated, better adjusted, in better shape than civilians. I forget where the study came from. I can dig that up. But, my friend Tim Abel, who has a Grateful Nation show, Ranger Vet, said the same thing. But that's, it's just like with the COVID-19 numbers. You can't trust the numbers.
Yeah, I understand. But, I've seen a lot of us have PTSD. And then, of course, I'm an EMT as well. So you drive ambulance. Anybody that sees drama or trauma, some kind of traumatic experience can essentially get this stuff. And
we all got it. And then when we think about it or remember it, it comes back.
It does. And except for this method does seem to shoot it in the head, no pun intended, but man, oh man, does it work well. And we're really excited. Like I say, if I can help 10% of the people that have PTSD, I'm golden. I can go to heaven and say, look what I did, And
and this is a long-term thing with you with the 1st Earth Battalion and
yes,
and Men Are Scared Goats and so
crazy rulers of the world.
Like George Clooney, I can tell you guys.
Yeah, George Clooney doesn't look as good as I do. I'm shocked about that, but whatever.
Well, I'm running out of time.
All right, thank you, sir.
Peter, I'm sorry I couldn't get you in there sooner, but cureptsdtoday.com. Thanks for calling. All the best.